facility user fees, and chemo. In 2018, the Ministry of Health and the Swiss-based Roche Pharmaceuticals signed an agreement aimed at making Herceptin free for breast cancer patients under the National Health Insurance Scheme. Country Director of Roche, Philip Addison, said the partnership between government and the Swiss company was to eliminate the cost barriers faced by breast cancer patients in Ghana.
What we had given the government was supposed to be completely reimbursed by the NHIS, so that patients would not have to pay. So that money would not be a barrier for any woman who would need Herceptin for breast cancer.
But Joy News checks reveal since November last year, health officials at the radiotherapy unit of the Kolebu Teaching Hospital have charged patients 3 different unapproved fees before administering the Herceptin injection. In one encounter, 2 patients were charged separate amounts, 250 Ghana cedis and 200 Ghana cedis. On the 14th of November last year, before assessing breast cancer medication, these monies were meant for facility user fees and chemotherapy, though none of the patients was offered chemotherapy. One of the patients we have decided to call Veronica said she sought explanation from the authorities at the radiotherapy unit of Kolebu on why she was charged for a treatment which was meant to be free. She was told the money was meant for consultation. She says,
"There is another one looking at your condition. There is an injection they give you, and for that one, NHIS covers it, but they still let you pay some amount to cover part."
If NHIS covers it, then it suggests that you don't have to pay anything. Have you asked them why they are making you pay when it's supposed to be free?
When you ask them, they tell you the radiotherapy unit is not, they don't take NHIS. So for their consultation and other things, you have to pay for it.
I have seen on the receipt that there is a cost for chemo. So when you pay the 200 cedis, do they conduct chemo on you?
No.
The Chief Executive Officer of the Kolebu Teaching Hospital, Dr. Daniel Asari, says his office isn't aware of these charges and has not sanctioned them. But head of the radiotherapy unit of the hospital, Dr. Joel Yane, tells us the patients are not supposed to pay these fees. The discrepancy was caused by delays in relaying the information to the facility not to charge breast cancer patients after government entered the agreement with Roche to absorb the cost related to breast cancer treatment in July last year. We began the investigation into the payment of these unapproved fees in November 2019. It means this delay Dr. Yane talks about has persisted for 5 months while patients were paying monies they weren't supposed to. Next, we traveled to the Ashanti regional capital, Kumasi, to ascertain how the free breast cancer care program was being run there. We met Ajua Kunedu, not a real name. She's one of the breast cancer patients assessing care at the Komfo-Anokye Teaching Hospital. She was charged 60 Ghana cedis for breast cancer treatment.
I was told I would require an injection to manage cancer. The drug, which is called Herceptin, will be injected into one of my thighs. Health officials indicated that is costly. I am charged 10 cedis when I pick up my folder, 20 cedis before the injection is administered, and finally 30 cedis for laboratory tests.
Ajua Konadu was also not supposed to be charged these fees under the existing agreement. A report on the implementation of the project to include the Herceptin injection on the medicine list of the National Health Insurance Scheme added the injectable at a reimbursable cost of 3,914 Ghana cedis to radiotherapy units of Kolebu and Kath. Sources at the National Health Insurance Authority tell us these units of the hospitals make 300 Ghana cedis in excess profit per vial of the Herceptin injection they administer to breast cancer patients. Head of the Oncology Department of Kath, Dr. Osebonsu, disclosed the monies charged to breast cancer patients would go into the Unit Development Fund. Clinical oncologists at Kath Dr. Frances Margaret Williams sheds more light on the rationale behind the fees charged breast cancer patients.
Every time a patient comes in to see a doctor, as in for a consultation, we have what we call a ward fund. The ward fund is meant to manage the place, as in you come, you want to use the washroom. After using the washroom, you need soap to wash your hands, some tissue. If a light bulb is not working, it's not now that we have to run to central management. We have to be able to do very little things. So we rely on that money to do those very little things. So every patient pays 10 cedis for the little things that we need to get the place running. And then for the patient on Herceptin, we pay the other 10 cedis is for the consumables. To get any injection, you have to give it sterilely. So the consumables that we need to give the medication under sterile conditions. Yeah, basically, that's what that 20 cedis is meant for.
But Country Director of Roche, Philip Addison, says this defeats the purpose of the program to provide free medication for the hundreds of women living with breast cancer.
That would be odd, because I wouldn't understand why. I wouldn't know why they are paying, because they are not supposed to pay.
Quitinatis report for Joy.
But the National Director of the Oncology Center at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital, Dr. Joe Oyani, admits they take those fees from the patients because the cost of service at the radiotherapy unit is not absorbed by the government.
It is not exactly so.
So what is the situation there?
When Herceptin is given, but what you are saying is partly true. And when Herceptin is given, it is given with another drug.
Which other drug is this?
It's called paclitaxel.
Okay.
And the paclitaxel may or may not be on the health insurance. The supply is a bit erratic. Sometimes it's on, sometimes it's not on. So the situation is not as simple as that.
And how much do you charge per that?
I don't know exactly, but it is billed by people involved.
You do not know how much you charge for that?
Pardon?
You do not know how much you charge for that?
I don't know exactly how much it's around that.
But are you charging facility user fee? Are you charging for chemotherapy as well?
Yes, we charge for facility user fee.
How much do you charge for facility user fee?
It depends on what the patients use. You need gloves, you need a coverall, you need a face mask, you need IV fluid. So depending upon what you use, it is covered.
Can you give us a range?
It will range from about, let's say, 150 to about 250.
150 to?
About
250.
Yeah.
The point you're making is that you're not supposed to be charging for these because you make up to 300 cedis when you administer the vial to these breast cancer patients, and that is supposed to be taken care of.
Taken care of by who?
As made the point already, by government, sir.
We are supposed to we are running a service, and we need this accoutrement. At the time of service delivery, we need to give IV. At the time of service delivery, a cannula is used. At the time of service delivery, if at the time the drug is not available, it has to be bought, not the effect.
Now, the NHIS board says the fees you are charging are unapproved, and this is Dr. Selby. How do you react to that?
He hasn't proven that it's unapproved.
She hasn't proven that it's unapproved? You are doubting the NHIS boss?
Yes.
That's the National Director of the Oncology Center at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital, Dr. Joe Oyani, speaking to my colleague Ernest Kojomenu on the Joy News channel earlier today. But let's stay on health-related matters, because some health workers in the central region are faulting health authorities there of not allowing them to isolate for 14 days after some of their colleagues tested positive for COVID-19. They insist they should have been allowed to spend the mandatory 14-day period in isolation while waiting for their test results rather than being asked to return to work. But health authorities in the region have discounted the claims of the workers. Richard Kojonyako has been investigating this. He's come through with this report.
Something is going contrary to the known protocols.
Meet Akosia, as I have chosen to call her. She's one of the house staff whose sample has been taken after 19 of her colleagues at the Elmina Polyclinic tested positive for the virus. The sheer numbers of house staff who've tested positive for the virus in her facility scares not only her, but other colleagues
so
of
less
her.
than a week they are asked to return when results are not even available. results of their samples taken is not available, but they are being asked to return. To just return to work. Whatever reason, we don't know. Can't just take anything for granted. That is our concern.
Akosia seems disturbed about how long it takes for results of test samples to be given, with some taking as long as 13 days. The biggest fears of Akosia and her colleagues are that they've been told by authorities to return to work while they wait for their test results, contrary to the expectation of spending 14 days in isolation. But the KEA Municipal Directorate of Health, where the Elmina Polyclinic falls under, debunks the claims of the health workers. Kathy Ampa Bryant clarifies the situation.
They have all been screened already and we know their status. So their status is negative. They are negative. It is out of the hand surveillance that we have some being positive and some being negative. So the positive one have been isolated and the negative one keep on working. We don't have any health worker whose samples have been taken and still awaiting results. It is the positive cases whose first and second follow-up samples have been taken, and they are already at home, so they are supposed to come to work. So this issue of this saying their samples have been taken and we have not received the results, and we are asking them to come to work. No, that is not it. Of course, we are in COVID, but healthcare needs to continue. There are people out there that need to be attended to. We cannot say that because of COVID, okay, then let's relax the system a little. Then people will not be dying of COVID, but will rather be dying of the usual sicknesses that we have, like the malaria, like the typhoid, like the other sickness, diarrhea, and all that.
Deputy Central Regional Health Director Dr. Godfred Kwabnasapon explains the Regional Health Directorate cannot close the entire health facilities down simply because many of the health staff want to sit at home.
Try the argument and say that, well, although we are not in the same shift, but well, they are my friends, and so I should also be tested and be asked to isolate. Essentially, we can stretch the argument to cover all the stuff. Every person then would have to isolate. That would mean that what? The facility would have to close down.
Richard Kujonyako's report there. This is the Midday News here on Joy 99.7 FM. Off to Parliament now, where the Interior Minister Ambrose Jerry has assured Parliament's government is stepping up the supply of PPEs to security officials along the borders so they can effectively keep the country safe from importation of COVID-19 cases. He's been responding to questions on the floor.
Mr. Speaker, I want to assure the Honourable member that the supply of PPEs has been stepped up. You realize that what happens at the borders is that it's not all of them who are simultaneously interacting with the person. And the PPEs that you wear in this house, most of them you cannot use beyond a day or two. So whilst we are stepping up the supplies, there's also the challenge that you don't need to overuse the PPEs lest they become ineffective. But yes, frontliners are being taken care of. And what we are doing is that the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Trade are working hard to make sure that locally produced PPEs are brought up to supplement the effort. But it will continue to be a challenge that we are dealing with. But I assure you we are dealing with it the best way possible.
That's the Interior Minister, Ambrose Derry there. Other happenings also on the floor. The Trade and Industry Minister, Alan Shermantin, says the Commander Sugar Factory will be revived soon whilst the country's borders are reopened. He says a new strategic investor, Park Agrotech Ghana Limited, has been approved by Cabinet to help revive the factory. He says Indian partners of Park Agrotech will come into the country once the borders reopen to begin work on the factory. Now, police in the Nkwanta South have rescued a number of children sold into slavery by their parents. At least 4 children were taken to shelters when the police and the International Justice Mission launched a nighttime raid on the shelters of the suspects. The children have been sold for as low as 500 Ghana cedis. Kojo Yankson tagged along and now reports.
Imagine not having 3 square meals to eat a day. Imagine not being able to play like you ought to play as a child. Now just imagine being beaten by a paddle.
Meet Leo Akun. He is Director of Advocacy and Partnerships at the International Justice Mission. They rescue child slaves here in Ghana.
Imagine having scars on your body. Imagine as a 4-year-old child, you wake up early in the morning and all you're asked to do is to go and push a boat onto the water.
Child trafficking is the dirty little secret Ghana has been sweeping under the carpet for decades. Children as young as 4 are sold for as little as 500 Ghana cedis to boat masters who use them for dangerous, grueling work, fishing on the Volta Lake and other water bodies.
We have 17 armed men, 3 detectives, and there are some female and some CPAs among them.
Today, I have been offered the opportunity to ride along as the Nkwanta South Police launch a daring late-night raid to rescue some slave children and apprehend their traffickers.
We are going to embark on an operation at a village in the Nkwanta district called Lako.
Intel for tonight's operation was gathered by undercover investigators who spent several weeks risking their lives to get close to the suspects and observe their criminal activities. It is time. In a fast-moving convoy, we set off on our mission. The journey to the target's location takes almost 3 hours. Suddenly, we emerge out of the darkness into the suspect's courtyard. As expected, everyone is asleep. The armed policemen start waking people up.
We're here in the compound where the suspects live. Behind me, one of the suspects, a lady in a cloth who is getting dressed. Another of the suspects is here, sitting on the mat, handcuffed to another suspect. There are family members all around. The suspect's children are here. We've identified 3 of the victims.
But what does freedom mean to children who don't realize that they have been trafficked?
So how many years have you been working with Papa on the lake? 1 year.
The youngest is about 10 years old, but he is no bigger than a 5-year-old child. Let's call him Prince.
So, when you are fishing, what is your job in particular? What do you do in particular?
He paddles.
He paddles?
Yes.
Is that hard work? Is it difficult? You must be very strong.
That's Kojo Yangson's report. We'll bring you the full report in our subsequent bulletins. Our top stories in this edition, though: Joy News Investigations review radiotherapy unit of Kolebu and Komfo-Anokye teaching hospitals charging breast cancer patients unapproved fees before they assess medication, which is free under the NHI. Still to come, Executive Director of Governance Think Tank IDEC describes as inadequate 2-day pilot on voter registration as Electoral Commission wraps up the exercise today.
I do not think 2 days pilot test in Accra is enough. You have to go to the other regions, maybe the newly created regions.
And later, as we continue our Spotlight series this week on some of Ghana's music legends, we hear from multiple award-winning high-life great Charles Kwadwo Fosu, popularly known as Daddy Lumba, whose career spanning over 3 decades gave life to the genre.
I'm really passionate about everything I'm doing. That's what has helped me for the years. And I'm grateful to God that I'm still capable.
This is the Midday News on Joy 99.7 FM, also live on myjoyonline.com as well as on Facebook and our social media platforms. Time now for sports. Hansman Sando has latest.
Before the Sports Minister Isaac Esiam has been speaking, this morning, and it appears there is no clear roadmap for the return of the Ghana Premier League, as he highlighted difficulties hampering the return of football.
Our task or directed the NSC was to look at even playing it on an empty stadium across the country. The grassroots cricket was a huge challenge, because not only about going to play, putting in place and observing all these professional measures. How do you get the players to get to well? Even sometimes it's risky putting them at the hotel. So how do you get them on board? And how do you also disinfect the top of the country? Not only that, testing is key. You test each player. In our environment, is it possible for us to play football without our supporters? Major challenge. So these are issues we are considering. The figure that came out from the NEC was about 6 times a match. So they're going to pay much. And this is huge. For me, it's not only about the money, it's about the life of our athletes, of our footballers. How do you ensure that they are safe at all these relief centers?
As the Minister for Youth and Sports, Isaac Isiama, speaking there, and it appears we have to wait a while longer to see some action at our various match venues. That's your sport.
But at least you can go back to the gym for now. You need it. Okay, so Governance Think Tank Institute for Democratic Governance says the 2-day period for the piloting of the voter registration exercise may not be adequate for the Electoral Commission to address concerns that may come up when the actual exercise begins. A piloting exercise which began yesterday ends today. The Commission had explained the exercise will expose the challenges it is likely to encounter for rectification before the actual registration. By speaking on the AM show on the Joy News channel today, Executive Director of IDEC, Dr. Emmanuel Akwete, said more piloting is needed, especially in areas that pose a challenge.
It is not just a testing of equipment. Probably it would also have to be a testing of their COVID-19, restrictive or restrictions, and how they would work well, and so on. So there are many pilots going to come on, not just the testing of the machine. They are returning officers in certain more densely populated areas. How would it go? For 2 days is certainly not enough, but I'm looking at what has happened in the past. The EC is an old institution. This will be the 8th consecutive elections it's organizing. In spite of the change of leadership, the EC is EC. I think in the past the EC has had more time than now, which is not entirely its fault. COVID is COVID. And so it's now going to have to operate within very strict, limited time. And that calls for greater cooperation. Otherwise, these processes will be delayed. So you're talking about 2 days. I do not think 2 days pilot test in Accra is enough. You have to go to the other regions. Maybe the newly created regions.
You heard the Executive Director of Governance Think Tank, IDEC, Dr. Emmanuel Akwete, and my colleague Prince Appiah has been monitoring the exercise in Kumasi as it wraps up today. He joins us with details. So what issues have come up so far?
Yeah, Emefa, until some few minutes ago, the exercise here was very smooth, just that they have some little hitches with the BVR machine, which had to halt the exercise for some minutes, and they have to continue now. So that was a challenge that had happened earlier, but now they've been able to register about 30 people, and the exercise is continuing smoothly. The issues about all the protocols expected to be observed are currently being observed. Briefly, I have the regional EC official here. I want us to speak briefly to him. So thank you very much for joining us on Joy News.
You're welcome.
We realized that there were some hitches with the exercise earlier today. What can you tell us about?
What hitches have you realized?
We're told about some BVR machine having some challenges earlier.
What challenges? If you can be brief about all kind of things.
Well, that's my colleague Prince Appiah interacting with the EC official at one of the centers. Of course, we'll bring that to you subsequently. But just before we go for entertainment, it's been 5 years after over 150 Ghanaians lost their lives in what can be described as the worst tragedy to ever hit the nation. One of the victims, Mr. Victor Eduasare, who but for a war would have lost his life, is appealing to government to help those who are struggling. He tells Joy News at the time he needed support with the hospital bills, there was no support from government. He is a victim of the June 3 disaster. We can hear from him.
Money is solely my family, and fortunately we were registered at the police CRD headquarters, and then they told me to go to Rich to collect a letter to send it to AMB. So I got the letter and I went to AMB. When I was there, I met two ladies and a gentleman. One lady was the head over there. So I introduced myself. I gave her my letter. He read it. After reading it, he said, "We are just using the help for those dead, not those alive." That's what they told me when I left. So the government myself, really help those in need. You should help them.
That's a victim of the June 3 disaster, 5 years on, still asking for support. May those who lost their lives, may they definitely rest in peace. Becky,
hello to
you.
Live. Yes, Emefa, do you know that, or did you know that Daddy Lumba was once a gospel musician?
I know he had one song, but I didn't know he was a full-time gospel musician.
Let's find out.
really passionate about everything I'm doing. I really love music. That's what has helped me for the years. Yeah.
At age 16, I was probably yet to figure out exactly what to do with my life. But the man Charles Kwejo Fosu, popularly known as Daddy Lumba, knew he was cut out for music. And the Joabing Senior High School Choir was a good place to start in 1983.
And I'm grateful to God that I'm still capable of doing what I'm doing today.
His sojourn in Germany after school connected him with a man credited partly for popularizing Burger High Life in Ghana, Nana Echampong. And that was the beginning of a career in high life music for him.
Normally I was a gospel singer, and it's only when I met Nana Echampong who diverted me from gospel into that high life stuff. I'm really grateful to him for what he did. And I think that was the major song that pushed me into the high life scene. And ever since I entered into the high life scene, I really loved it, and I've enjoyed every moment.
Well, that was Daddy Lumba. We're celebrating 3 decades.
Your face is what?
And it was very quiet.
And that's it for the Midday News. You're on Joy 99.7 FM. There's more news when you log on to myjoyonline.com. I am Emefa Apawu. Thanks so much for your company.